Welcome back to Monster Hunter Wiles, and this is where I'm going to be doing my audio book. Well, not my audio book. I'm doing an audio presentation of Quag. Yesterday I didn't really get to the point why I'm doing this, because I've had a lot of things influence me over the years, and video games is heavily into that.
I always knew you were a fellow admirer of history's lost relics.
What? Okay, Alma. She's gonna talk every once in a while. No. No. My God, I stretch. Yeah, but yeah, video games had a big impact on me, and being able to do the audio reading with a video game as a background is actually kind of cool, especially when I can have the character just sit there and relax and do things like stretch. Him a toast to drink, which I need to go get before I start reading. I almost forgot. I need to do this. Need my drink, because I'm going to be doing some reading. For myself some mineral water. A little bit more. My TV mug. Thank you, Lunchbox. So today we're going to be reading Chapter 2 of Quag. And then I'm going to go hunt some monsters. So without further ado,
The sand, it creates fulgurite.
hopefully,
And there's plenty
if I get
here.
bad weather while I'm doing this, because it is in fallow at the moment, so it might switch to the lightning storm, I will have to move. But we'll wait to see if that happens. So, Quag Chapter 2. And I hit the wrong thing. Wizard's Wiles. I'm gonna get her so she's reading. Now, she doesn't read permanently, so I'll do things to keep her a little bit active. The newcomer approached them directly. His pale face above the high, sandy collar of his cloak marked him as one who dwelt much indoors by reason of necessity or choice. Though his features were human enough in their cast, still Milo, seeking their impassivity, the thinness of his bold, bloodless lips, the sharp beak curve of his nose, hesitated to claim him as a brother man. His eyelids were near closed, but as he reached the table, he opened them widely, and they could see that his pupils were of no human color, rather dull red, like a smoldering coal. Save for those eyes, the only color about him was the badge sewn to the shoulder of his cloak. And that was so intricate that Milo could not read its meaning. It appeared to be an entwining of a number of wizardly runes. When the newcomer spoke, his voice was low-pitched, and he had no more emotion than the monotone of those who repeated a set of messages without personal care for its meaning. You are summoned. By whom and where? Nail growled and spat again, the flush of his loud, broad face darkening. I have taken no service. Milo caught the berserker's arm. No more than I, but it would seem that this is what we have waited. For in him, that expectancy which had been building to a climax now blended into a compulsion he could not withstand. For a moment, it seemed that the berserker was going to dispute the summons. Then he swung up his fur cloak and fastened it with a boar's head buckle at his throat. "Let us be gone, then," he growled. "I would see an end to this bedazzlement, and that speedily." The pseudo-dragon tittered shrilly, shooting its tongue at the messenger, as it would have enjoyed impaling some part of the stranger on the spear point. Again, Milo felt the nudge of spinning dice at his wrist. If he could only remember. There was a secret locked in that armlet that he must learn, and soon. For as he stood now, he felt helpless, like a sharp-set wound. They came out of Haveral's axe on the heels of the messenger. Though the upper part of the city was well lighted, this portion was far too shadowed. Those who dwelt and carried out their plans here knew the shadows as friends and defenses. However, as the three of them strode along, and they followed a crooked alley where the houses leaned above them as if eyes set in upper stories would spy on passers-by. Milo's overactive imagination was ready to endow those same houses. Closed and barred against the night, and with seldom a dim glow to mark a small paned window, with knowledge greater than its own, as if they snickered slyly as the three passed. Before they reached the end of the thieves' quarter, a dark form slipped from the arched doorway. Though he had no warning from the armlet, Milo's hand instantly sought his sword. Then the newcomer fell into step with them, and the very dim light showed the green and brown apparel of an elf. Few, if any, of that blood were ever drawn into the ways of the chaos. Now, better light from a panel above the next door made it plain that the newcomer was one of the wood rangers. His longbow, unstrung, was at his back, and he bore a quiver full of arrows right tight packed. In addition, both a hunter's knife and his sword were sheathed at his belt. But, most noticeable to the swordsman, on his wrist he too wore the same bracelet that marked the berserker and Milo himself. Interesting. Their guide did not even turn his head to mark the coming of the elf, but kept ahead at a gliding walk, which Milo found he must extend his stride to match. Nor did the newcomer offer any greeting to either of the men. Only the pseudo-dragon turned its green, gem-pointed eyes to the newcomer and trilled a thin, shrill cry. Elves had the common tongue, though sometimes they disdained to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. However, beside it, and their own speech, they also had mastery over communication with animals and birds. And it would seem pseudo-dragons, Bernail's pet or comrade, had shrilled that what must be a greeting. If the elf answered, it was by mind talk alone. He made no more sound than the shadows around them, far less the hissing slip-slip of the guide's footgear, which was oftentimes drowned out by the clack of their own boots' heels on the pavement. They proceeded into wider and less winding streets, catching glimpses now and then of some shield above a door to mark a representative of Blackmer, a merchant of substance from Ernst, or the lands of the holy lords of Haraz. So the four came to a narrow way between two towering walls. At the end of the passage stood a tower. It was not impressive at first, as were some towers in Greyhawk. The surface of the stone facing was lumpy and irregular. those pox and rises, Milo noted, when they came to the single door facing the alley, that had brought them and could see that the door light were carving had intricately unfolded and repeated as the patch upon their guide's cloak. From what he could distinguish, well, the stone was not local grayish tan either, but instead a dull green, over which wandered lines of yellow, adding to this confusion of the cavern patterns in a way to make the eyes ache if one tried to follow either carving or the yellow vein. Yep. He whom they followed laid one hand to a door, and it swung immediately open, as if there was no need for bars or other protection in this place. Light, wan yet brighter than they had seen elsewhere, flowed out to engulf them. Here were no baskets of firewasps. The light stemmed from the walls themselves, as if the yellow veins gave off a sickly radiance. By the glow, Milo saw that the faces of his companions looked as palely ghost-like as those of some leech serving chaos. He did not like this place, but his will was bound as tightly as if fetters enclosed his wrists and chains pulled him forward. They passed in silence along a narrow corridor to come at the end to a corkscrew of a stairway. Because their guide fitted up it, they did likewise. Milo saw an oily drop of sweat streak down the berserker's nose, dripped to his chin where the bristles of perhaps 2 days of neglect sprouted vigorously. His own palms were wet.
I always knew you were a fellow admirer of history's lost relics.
And he had to fight a desire to wipe them on his cloak. Up they climbed, passing 2 levels
Stretch the sand, it creates fulgurite.
of
There's
the
plenty
tower.
of it here.
Coming at last, a single great room. Here, it was stifling hot. A fire burned in the hearth in the very middle, smoke trailing upward through an opening in the roof. But the rest of the room, Milo drew a deep breath. This was no lord's audience chamber. There were tables on which lay piles of books, some bound in wooden boards eaten by time until perhaps only their hinges of metal held them together. There were canisters of scrolls, all pitted and green with age. Half the floor their guide stepped confidently out upon was inlaid with a pentagon and other signs and runes. The sickly light was a little better here, helped by the natural flames of the fire. "What are you?" demanded that voice once more. There was such urgency in it that he found himself answering it. "Martin Jefferson, what are you doing?" His bewilderment grew. He was playing a game. Something extern had suggested that they practice up on for the convention using new QK. I'm going to stumble this. QK figures. That was it. Just playing a game. I skipped ahead. Whoops. Ignore that. Shit. Standing by fire as if... We'll get back to that. I goofed. Hang my fingers. All my right hand salt. As if his paunchy body still craved heat in spite of temperature of the chamber, was a man of perhaps Milo's height. Yet stooped a little of shoulder and completely bald of head. In place of hair, the dome of his skin-covered skull had been painted or tattooed with the same unreadable design as marked the cloak patch of his servant. He wore a gray robe, tied with what looked like a length of plain yellowish rope, and that robe was marked with no design or symbol. His right wrist, Milo was quick to look for that, was bare of any copper dice bracelet. He could have been any age, and he was plainly in no cheerful mood. Yet, as the swordsman stepped up beside Nail, the elf quickly closed in to make a third. Milo, for the first time, felt free of compulsion and constant surveillance. The wizard surveyed them critically, as a buyer in the slave market might survey proffered wares. Then he gave a small hacking cough, like I do a lot, when smoke puffed into his face and waved a hand to drive away that minor annoyance. Nail Fangtooth, Milo Joggin, and Grush. It was not as if he meant the listing of names as a greeting, but rather as if he were reckoning up a sum important to himself. Now he beckoned, and from the other side of the fire, 4 others advanced. I am, of course, Hystaps. And why the great power saw fit to draw me into this meeting, he scowled. But if one deals with the powers, it is a two-way matter, and one pays the price in the end. Behold your fellows. His wave of the hand was theatrical as he indicated the 4 who had come into the full sight, as Milo, Nail, and the elf and Grush had distinctly moved shoulder to shoulder, so did these also stand. The metal maid, Yvel, Hystaps indicated, a slender figure in full mail. She had pushed her helmet back a little on her forehead, and a wisp of red-brown hair showed. For the rest, her young face was near as passive as that of their guide. She wore, however, Milo noticed, that he was beginning to consider the dangerous bracelet. Dear Dine, who puts his faith in the gods men make for themselves? There was exasperation in the wizard's voice as he spoke the name of the next. By his robe of gray, faced with white, Deef Dine was a follower of Landaron, of the inner light, and of the 3rd rank. But a bracelet encircled his wrist also. He gave a slight nod to the other 3. But there was a frown on his face, and he was plainly uneasy in his present company. The bard, Wimark. The red-headed man wore a Scald's Field carp in a bag on his back, smiled as if he were playing a part, and was slightly amused at both his own role and the company of his fellow players. And, of course, Gulf. His visible exasperation came to the surface as he indicated the last of the 4. The introduction was answered by a low growl from Nail Fangtooth. What man shares a venture with an eater of carrion? Get you out, Scaleskin, or I'll have that skin off your back and ready to make me boots. The lizard man's stare was unblinking. He did not open his fanged jaws to answer, though. The lizard people used and understood the common tongue well enough, but Milo did not like the way the reptile gaze swept the berserker from head to foot and back again. Lizardmen were considered neutral in the eternal struggles and skirmishes of law and chaos, On the other hand, a neutral did not awake trust in any man. Their sense of loyalty seldom could be so firmly engaged that they would not prove traitorous in some moment of danger. And this specimen of his race was formidable to look upon. He was fully as tall as Nail, and in addition to the wicked sword, a bone double-edged with teeth that he carried, his natural armament of fang and claw was weaponry even a hero might consider twice before facing. Yet on his scaled wrist, as of that of the bard and the cleric, was the same bracelet. Now the wizard turned to the fire, pointed a forefinger. Phrases of language that meant nothing to Milo came from his lips in an invoking chant. Out of the heart of the flames spread more smoke, but in no random puff. This was a serpent of white which writhed through the air, reaching out. It split into two, and one loop of it fell about Milo, Nail, and the elf before they could move, noosing around their heads just as the other branch noosed around the four facing them. Milo sputtered and coughed. He could see nothing of the room now, or of those in it, but... All right. You play that one, then. Now the problem is, a room, misty, only half seen, sheets of paper. He was... Where are you? A voice boomed through the midst of the resonance of the great bell.
Aha! I always knew you were a fellow admirer of history's lost relics.
Who was he? What a crazy question. He was Martin Jefferson, of course. Now we get to where it's supposed to be. Who are you? Demanded the voice once more. There was such urgency in it that he found himself answering it. Martin Jefferson, what are you doing? His bewilderment grew. He was playing a game. Something extern had suggested they practice up on for the convention using the new QK figures. This was it, just playing a game. No, the booming voice denied, leaving him bewildered, completely puzzled. Who are you? Martin wet his lips to answer. There was a question of two of his own, for which he wanted an answer. The mist was so thick he could not see the table, and that was not Extern's voice, it was more powerful. But before he could speak again, he heard a second voice. Nelson Langley. Nels. That was Nels, but Nels had not come tonight. In fact, he was out of town. He
I can't help but
had
want to
heard
touch them, but I'll refrain.
What are you doing? Again, the relentless inquiry. I'm playing a game, Nell's voice sounded. Odd, strong enough, and yet as if this unending fog muffled it a little. No game. For the second time, that curt answer was emphatic. Martin tried to move, to break through the fog. This was like one of those dreams where you could not get away from an ever-encroaching shadow. Who are you? James Ritchie. Who is James Ritchie? He'd never heard of him before. What was going on? Martin longed to shout out that question and discovered that he could not even shape the words. He was beginning to be frightened now. If this was a dream, it was about time to wake up. What are you doing? Martin was not in the least surprised to hear the same answer he and Nels had given. The same denial followed. Who are you? Susan Spencer. That was the girl's voice. Again, that of a stranger. Then came three other voices. Lloyd Collins, Belle Ford, Max Stein. The smoke was at last beginning to thin. Martin's head hurt. He was Martin Jefferson, and he was dreaming. But As the smoke drifted away in ragged patches, he was not back at the table with Extern. No, this was the Tower Hephaestus. I'm always going to get that name wrong. He was Milo Jagan, swordsman, but he was also Martin Jefferson. The warring memories in his skull seemed enough for a wild moment or two to drive him mad. You see, the wizard nodded as his gaze shifted from one of the faces to the next. Masterly, and as evil as the 99 sins of the Salzak, the spirit murderer. The wizard seemed divided, too, as if he both hated and feared what he might have learned from them. Still, a part of him longed for the control of the power, as had done as to them. I am Susan, the battle maid took a step forward. I know I am Susan, but I am also Yavel. And these two try to live within me at once. How can this be a thing? She flung up her arms as if to ward off some danger, and the light glinted off her bracelet. You are not alone, the wizard told her. There was no warmth, the human feeling, in his voice. It was brisk in tone, as if he would get on other things at once, now that he had learned what he wished from them. Milo slipped off his helm, let his metal coif fall back against his shoulders like a hood so he could rub his aching forehead. I was playing a game. He tried to reassure himself and that those moments of clear thought within the circle of smoke were real, that he would win out of this. Games, spat the wizard. Yes, it is those games of yours, fools that you are, that have given the enemy his chance. Had it not been that, I who know the lesser and the larger spells of Ulik and Dom, was searching for an answer to an archaic formula, you would already be his things. Then you would play games right enough, his games, and for his purpose. This is a land where law and chaos are ever struggling one against each other. But the laws of chance will let neither gain full sway. Now this other threat has come to us, and neither law nor chaos are boundaries for him, or them, for even yet we know not the matter of kind of what menaces us. We are in a game? Milo rubbed his throbbing head again. Is that what you were saying? Trying to tell us? Who are you? Snapped the wizard as he struck with a war axe without any warning. Martin Milo Jagan. Already, the Milo part of him was winning command, driving the other memory far back into his mind, locking and barring doors that meant its freedom. Hephaestus shrugged. You see? And that is the badge of your servitude that you set upon yourselves in your own sphere of life. With the lack of wit only fools know. He pointed to the bracelet. Nail dug a hand on his wrist, using his great strength, but he could not move it. They all broke the short silence. It would seem, Master Wizard, that you know far more than we do concerning this matter, and that also you have some hand in it, or we would not be gathered here to be shown what you deem to be sorcery behind it. If we were brought to this world to serve your unknown menace, then you must have some plan. Plan? The wizard shouted. How can a man plan against that which is not of his world or time? I learned by chance what might have happened. What might happen far enough in advance so that I was able to take precautions against a complete victory for the enemy. Yes, I gathered you in. Them are so confident that there are no ready and waiting, no part ready or waiting for you to play. The mere fact that you were here perhaps accomplished the first purpose toward which the enemy strives. By so little am I in advance of what is to come. Tell us then, follower of the sorcerer's ways, the cleric spoke up, what you know, what you expect, and the wizard laughed harshly. I know as much as those who serve those faceless gods of yours, Dine. If there are any gods, which is problematic, why should they concern themselves with the fates of men or even of nations? But yet, I will tell you what I know, chiefly because you are now tools of mine, and you shall be willing tools, for this has been done to you against your will, and you have enough of the instincts of life kind to resent such usage. Carl, he clapped his hands from the darker end of the room, moved the messenger who had led them, and his comrades. Bring stools and drink, and food, for the night is long and there is much to be said here. Only Gulf, the lizard man, disdained a stool, curling up on the floor, his crocodile-snouted head supported on his hands, with never a blink of his eyelids, so that he might have been a grotesque statue. But the rest laid their weapons down and sat in a semicircle facing the wizard, as if they were a class of novices about to learn the rudiments of charm. The wizard settled himself in a chair, and Carl dragged forward to watch as they drank from goblets fashioned in the form of queer and fabulous beasts, and ate a dark, tough bread spread with strong-smelling but good-tasting cheese. Though Milo's head still ached, he had lost that terrible sense of inner conflict, and for that he was glad. Still, he remembered, as if that were a dream, that once he had been someone else in another and very different world. Only that did not matter so much now, for this was Milo's world, and the more he let Milo's memory rule him, the safer he was. The dreams of men, of some men, the wizard began, smoothing his robe across his knees, can be very strong. We know this, we seekers of knowledge. That has been found, lost, hidden, and found again many times over. For man has always been a dreamer, and it is when he begins to build upon his dreams that he achieves that which is greatest of gifts. We've discovered that it may be entirely possible that what a man dreams in one world may be created and given substance in another. And if more than one dream, the same dreams, strive to bring them to life, then the more solid and permanent becomes that other world. Also, dreams seep from one space-time level to a world to another, taking root in new soil and there growing, perhaps even to great permanence. You have all played what you call a war game, building a world you believe imaginary, in which you stage your adventures and exploits. Well enough, you say. What harm lies in that? You know it is a game. When it is done, you put aside your playthings for another time. Only, what if the first dreamer who invented this world according to your conception gathered unknowingly dream knowledge of one that did and does exist in another time and space? Have you ever thought of that? He leaned forward, a fierceness in his eyes. More and more does this dream world enchant you. Why should it not? If it really is a pale, conscious, filtered bit of another reality, therefore it gains a substance in your mind, and in a measure is drawn closer to your own world. The more players who think about it, the stronger the pull between them will be. Do you mean, Yvel asked, that what we imagine can become real? Was not playing the game very real to you when you played it? Countered the wizard. Mila nodded without thought and saw that even the lizard head of Gulf echoed that gesture. So, but in this there is little harm, for you play but a shadow of our world, and what you do there does not influence events that happen. Well and good. But suppose someone, something outside both of our spaces and times sees a chance to meddle. What then? You tell us, Nail growled. You tell us. Tell us why we are here and what you, or this other thing you do not seem to know very much about, really wants of us. And that is the end of chapter 2. And in the part that I'm going to cut out for YouTube here. But I'm going to say this last thing. Right there, that right there is what solidified a thought in my head back when I first read this, when it literally almost first came out. Right there, the glimmer of creativity started in my head. Or high school. Man, it seems so long ago. That being said, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll see you in the near future for Chapter 3. And if you're watching on Twitch, we're going to go hunt a monster, because we still got about 30 minutes left. Thank you for watching over on YouTube. I'll see you in the near future. And if you're watching on Twitch, we still got some stuff to do. Oh my god. Raivu, wake up. Wake up. No. I know I've let you sit there for a bit, but we're going to go hunt some stuff. What's the time left in our buff? Yeah, we need to eat something first. I don't know what we're going to go hunt, though. Let's see.